picture this. You open your phone, right, looking for a specific patch of woods in northwestern Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
You know the history of the region. You know there used to be a settlement there, so you zoom in on the map, expecting to see, like, the usual markers. A historical plaque icon, maybe an old cemetery, or even just the name of a dead town.
Right, the stuff you always see.
Exactly. But instead, you find this gaping void, like a place that, by every modern legal and cartographic definition, has been deliberately scrubbed from existence.
Which is just super unsettling to actually see.
It really is.
Yeah.
No roads point to it, no signs announce it. We are basically looking at a geographical ghost.
It creates an immediate sense of unease, doesn't it? I mean, we are so accustomed to the idea that human civilization has charted, categorized, and, claimed every square inch of the map.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when a landscape is actively erased from public record and placed under strict, heavy surveillance by private security, it begs a massive question about what exactly that land is harboring.
Welcome to another custom-tailored deep dive. Today, you and I are trekking into the permanent shadows of the Dark Entry Forest.
Oh, this is a heavy one.
Yeah, it really is. We are investigating the intensely dark, multi-layered history of Dudleytown, Connecticut, which is a place widely feared and, continuously mythologized as America's Village of the Damned.
That's quite a title.
Right. It's an entire settlement that was abandoned in the early 1800s, completely swallowed by the forest, and remains under a profound lockdown today.
And, the paradox of that lockdown is really what makes our stack of sources so compelling today.
For sure. I mean, look at what we've got here.
Right. We are pulling from historical documentaries, genealogical records reaching back, 500 years, modern geological soil surveys, and a surprisingly thick stack of current state police reports.
Yeah, the police reports are wild.
Because despite the extreme ecological dangers and the strict legal prohibitions, modern thrill seekers are arrested in these woods by the dozen every single year.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because we are looking at a massive collision between Hollywood-style myth and a brutal, slow-moving historical reality.
Exactly.
On one hand, you have the flashy local legend, right? Like a multi-generational bloodline curse, complete with demons, phantom hands, and doomed aristocrats.
It's like folklore.
Right. But contrasting that, we have the grim, grueling, and ultimately fatal daily reality of the original settlers trying to conquer an environment that was, fundamentally designed to reject human biology.
It was a death trap.
It really was. So our mission today is to figure out why people in the 21st century are so magnetically drawn to a place that literally poisoned the people who built it.
Well, to understand the psychology of those modern trespassers, we first have to understand the mythology they are chasing.
Makes sense. Where do we start?
The reason anyone thinks Dudleytown is cursed today traces back to a story that supposedly doomed these settlers centuries before they even, conceptualized moving to Connecticut.
Okay, call me intrigued.
Yeah, we have to start in 16th century England with the legend of the beheaded nobleman.
Oh, wow. Okay. So the 1500s. King Henry VII is on the throne, centralizing his power, and he employs a lawyer named Edmund Dudley.
Yes.
And Edmund wasn't just a bureaucrat, right? He was basically the king's absolute apex predator when it came to debt collection.
That is a very accurate way to describe him.
His entire function was to exploit obscure legal loopholes to aggressively squeeze wealth out of the English nobility to fill the royal treasury.
This is a critical piece of the historical context, actually, because the nobility in early Tudor England were used to operating almost as independent warlords.
Oh, right. They had their own armies and everything.
Exactly. So Henry VII was deliberately trying to break their power, and Edmund Dudley was the mechanism of that oppression.
He was the bad cop.
He was the man knocking on a duke's door and demanding crippling fines for, decades-old forgotten infractions. He became the singular focal point for the rage of an entire social class.
Which is a very dangerous position to be in when your boss dies.
Ve-
Because in 1509, Henry VII passes away. His son, the famously volatile Henry VIII, takes the throne.
And we all know how he handled problems.
Yeah, usually with an axe. The new young king needs to appease a furious aristocracy, so he immediately throws his father's chief enforcer to the wolves.
Just completely sacrifices him.
Yeah. Edmund Dudley is arrested for treason, and on July 30th, 1510, he is beheaded at Tower Hill. His head is spiked on London Bridge.
Brutal.
Very. But the story doesn't end with his execution. The legend insists that a curse was placed on him in that moment of downfall.
And the mechanism of that curse is deeply intertwined with how Tudor law actually operated.
Wait, how so?
Well, in the 16th century, a conviction of high treason carried a penalty called attainder, which resulted in the corruption of blood.
Corruption of blood. That sounds incredibly metal.
It sounds super supernatural, right? But this wasn't just a social stigma. It was a brutal legal unpersoning. The family's titles were stripped, their lands and wealth were confiscated by the crown, and the descendants were legally barred from inheriting property or titles.
Wait, I want to pause there because that implies the quote-unquote curse was actually a bureaucratic statute. Are the sources suggesting the supernatural legend was just a dramatic misinterpretation of English property law?
That is the foundation of the sociological theory, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, think about the psychological weight of that. You go from being the most powerful family in the kingdom to absolute impoverished pariahs overnight.
Yeah, that would feel like a curse.
Right. Society actively shuns you. And in that era, sudden, catastrophic misfortune was almost universally attributed to divine punishment or witchcraft.
Of course.
Some variations of the myth claim the vengeful nobility summoned a literal demonic hex, while others blame the Catholic Church. But the practical reality of being an attained, hated family meant you were cut off from the social safety nets that prevented early death and tragedy.
So it functioned identically to a supernatural curse.
Exactly.
And the folklore insists this dark cloud followed the Dudley bloodline across the Atlantic Ocean, right? Eventually settling over the dark entry forest in Connecticut.
Which is a great story.
It makes for an incredible movie script. But when you look at the genealogical records we have in our sources, this entire 500-year-old aristocratic ghost story shatters completely.
What's fascinating here is that it dissolves upon contact with modern methodology.
Yeah, it doesn't hold up at all.
Genealogists don't just look at shared last names, right? They track parish, birth registers, land deeds, ship manifests, tax rolls.
All the boring, undeniable paperwork.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the professionals who have meticulously audited the Dudleytown lineage have found a complete void. There is zero connection, genetically, legally, or historically, between Edmund Dudley, the beheaded nobleman of London, and the Dudleys who arrived in Cornwall, Connecticut.
So they weren't related at all.
Not even a little bit.
The Cornwall Dudleys weren't disgraced lords fleeing a royal hex. The records show they were just regular, modest farmers who had already migrated to Massachusetts in the 1600s.
Right.
They were separated from Edmund Dudley by over a century of time, a massive ocean, and a completely different socioeconomic class.
The entire narrative of the cursed bloodline was retroactively grafted onto these colonial farmers long after their settlement collapsed.
It's an incredibly convenient narrative device, honestly.
How do you mean?
Well, it's like failing a math test because you didn't study, but telling everyone your ancestors were cursed by Pythagoras.
Oh, that's perfect.
It completely shifts the blame, right? From a mundane failure to an epic supernatural tragedy. Instead of admitting you bought a horrible piece of real estate and failed in agriculture, you get to claim you were the tragic victim of an ancient, unavoidable royal doom.
And we constantly see this in human behavior. I mean, we vastly prefer a comprehensible supernatural villain over an invisible, slow-moving ecological disaster.
Because it's easier to understand.
Exactly. A curse can theoretically be broken. It has rules. You can outrun it. But bad soil cannot be reasoned with.
You can't outrun geology.
Precisely. You cannot perform an exorcism on toxic groundwater. You cannot negotiate with a glacier. So if the English curse was entirely fabricated, we have to examine the physical ground beneath the settlers' feet to understand why this town experienced such an agonizing total collapse.
Which brings us to the actual physical environment of the dark entry forest. And it's fascinating that the first people to recognize the lethal nature of this land weren't European scientists.
Right, they were way behind.
It was the Mohawk Nation, who had been in the region for centuries. Our sources indicate the Mohawk used this specific valley for hunting, but they considered the land itself forbidden for settlement.
Yes, they were very clear about that.
They delivered a very explicit warning to the early Europeans. They basically said the spirits of the land would not allow habitation, and the valley would claim anyone who tried to stay.
And we need to look at how we interpret historical indigenous warnings.
Oh, right, because they were often ignored.
Exactly. European settlers routinely dismissed these statements as primitive superstition. But indigenous environmental knowledge is built on thousands of years of acute observational ecology.
It's science.
Yes. When the Mohawk warned that the land would claim them, They were articulating a recognized environmental hostility. They understood the carrying capacity of that specific valley was zero.
I do wonder, though. I mean, settlers ignored indigenous warnings all across the American continent.
Mhm.
They built Plymouth, they built Jamestown. Those places suffered horrific winters and starvation, but they eventually stabilized and grew.
They did.
So why was this specific warning in Connecticut the one that proved to be a 100% fatal prophecy? What made Dudleytown so uniquely unsurvivable?
To answer that, we really have to look at the sky, the soil, and the water.
Okay, break it down for me.
Let's start with the topography. Dudleytown sits in a valley surrounded by incredibly steep, looming mountains.
Okay.
And because of the angle of these peaks and the density of the forest, the valley floor sits in a state of perpetual shadow.
Wait, like actual shadow?
Yes. Even in the peak of summer, the area receives a meager 4 hours of direct sunlight a day.
4 hours. Put yourself in the shoes of an 18th century pioneer. Your entire existence, the survival of your children through the winter, depends entirely on your ability to force crops out of the ground.
Literally.
Photosynthesis is your only currency. Trying to farm in a valley that essentially exists in constant twilight is a mathematical impossibility. You are operating at a massive caloric deficit before you even plant a seed.
And that's assuming the soil is workable, which, spoiler alert, it fundamentally isn't.
Oh, right, the glaciers.
Exactly. When the Laurentide ice sheet retreated at the end of the last ice age, it didn't leave behind rich, loamy topsoil in this valley.
No.
It dumped what geologists call glacial till, which is a dense, chaotic mixture of clay, sand, and massive, unyielding boulders.
It's an agricultural graveyard. You can't run a wooden plow through a field of ancient rocks.
You really can't.
So you have an isolated population that is severely malnourished, freezing, and living in constant oppressive darkness. That alone is enough to create severe psychological distress. But the geological surveys highlight a third, hidden factor that elevates this from a sad story of failed farming to a genuine horror story.
The invisible killer in the groundwater.
Here's where it gets really interesting. When you build a homestead, the very first thing you do is dig a well.
Right, you need daily drinking water.
Exactly. But the specific glacial deposits under Dudleytown contain naturally occurring extremely high concentrations of lead and arsenic.
The implications of this are just devastating.
Yeah.
Because these settlers weren't just starving in the dark, they were systematically poisoning themselves multiple times a day.
Oh, man.
Every time they drank from the well, every time they boiled water for soup, every time a mother nursed a child, they were accumulating heavy metals in their tissue.
How does that actually break down the human body, though? Because when we hear lead poisoning, we usually think of, like, modern plumbing issues,
Right, old paint, stuff like that.
Yeah, not 18th century pioneers going mad in the woods. What is the actual mechanism happening inside their brains?
Okay, let's look at lead first. On a molecular level, lead mimics calcium in the human body.
Okay.
Your brain uses calcium to transmit signals between neurons. When lead enters the bloodstream, it crosses the blood-brain barrier, takes the place of calcium, and essentially blocks those vital neurotransmitters from firing.
So it's literally stopping the brain from communicating with itself.
It completely short-circuits the communication network. Chronic exposure, especially in a malnourished population.
Which they definitely were.
Exactly. It leads to severe neurological degradation. We are talking about profound memory loss, chronic fatigue, intense irritability, and severe mood disorders, including devastating clinical depression.
And then you add the arsenic on top of that.
Right. Now, arsenic operates differently, but it's just as brutal. It binds to enzymes involved in cellular respiration.
So it suffocates the cells.
It literally prevents your cells from using oxygen to create energy.
Wow.
Chronic arsenic exposure leads to neuropathy, which is a tingling and numbing of the extremities, muscle weakness, skin lesions, and eventual organ failure.
That sounds horrific.
It is. But crucially, it also causes severe psychological symptoms, including paranoia, confusion, and hallucinations.
So imagine the reality of these families. You are isolated from the rest of the world. You are living in a sunless, freezing hollow. Your crops are failing, and your brain chemistry is being fundamentally dismantled by heavy metals.
Piece by piece.
You are experiencing paranoia, you are hallucinating, your family members are sinking into catatonic depressions, you don't have a microscope, you don't know what a heavy metal is, you would absolutely 100% believe you are being hunted by a demonic curse.
It is a perfect storm for localized, environmentally induced psychosis.
It really is.
And with that mechanism understood, the actual historical timeline of the Dudleytown settlement stops looking like a ghost story and starts looking like a tragic slow-motion medical disaster.
Let's trace that timeline, actually, because watching this environment methodically break these people down is chilling.
It's hard to read.
It starts in the early 1740s. A man named Thomas Griffiths is the first documented European to arrive. He clears some land, builds a small farmhouse, tries to work the glacial till, and within 2 years, he completely abandons the property.
Smart guy.
He really was. He doesn't leave a journal explaining why. He just packs whatever he can carry and flees.
Griffiths clearly recognized the hostility of the valley, but his abandoned, pre-cleared farm looked like a golden opportunity to the next arrival.
Oh, I'm sure it did.
In 1745, Gideon Dudley moves in. He buys Griffiths' abandoned plot, and he immediately runs into the exact same brick wall. Massive crop failures, freezing shadows, and rock-choked soil.
But Gideon is stubborn. He digs in.
He does.
By 1755, he convinces his relatives to join him, his cousins Barzillai, Abiel, and Martin Dudley.
What a mistake.
Seriously. And we need to pause here to correct a massive misconception for you listening, because when we hear the word Dudleytown, our modern brains envision a bustling colonial village.
Right, you picture a tavern, a meeting house, a blacksmith, a main street.
Exactly. The reality is staggeringly different.
Staggeringly. At its absolute demographic peak in 1755, Dudleytown consisted of precisely 4 families.
Wait, really?
Yes, it was roughly 15 human beings total.
That is wild.
It was never a town. It was a microscopic, desperate encampment huddled together in the dark.
15 people. I mean, the psychological claustrophobia of that is intense.
Oh, absolutely.
If one person starts losing their mind, the entire community feels the shockwave. And that collapse begins almost immediately.
It doesn't take long.
In 1757, just a couple of years after the town hits its peak, Gideon Dudley's wife dies. The historical records of the time list her cause of death as melancholy of the mind.
Which is the 18th century diagnostic term for severe, fatal clinical depression.
Right.
And while the harshness of frontier life naturally caused high rates of depression across New England, the suddenness and depth of her decline deeply unsettled the community.
It wasn't normal.
No, she didn't succumb to a winter fever. She completely wasted away from despair.
When you map her rapid psychological collapse against the daily consumption of lead-tainted well water, the mystery vanishes entirely.
Exact.
Her brain was being poisoned.
Yeah.
But the tragedies keep accelerating. Gideon eventually remarries, but his second wife can only endure the valley for 2 years before she literally flees the settlement.
Like Griffiths did.
Exactly. Then Gideon's adult son, who has spent his entire life drinking that toxic water, succumbs to the exact same melancholy. He becomes entirely withdrawn, stops working the land, and in 1768, he dies at the age of 32.
And the community unofficially understood it as a suicide.
It's just devastating.
Yeah.
You were watching a family tree essentially wither from the roots up.
You really are.
But the event that permanently cemented Dudleytown's reputation, the moment the community shifted from feeling unlucky to feeling actively, supernaturally hunted, happened in 1785.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is a textbook example of an extreme statistical anomaly accelerating a myth.
Oh, you're talking about General Herman Swift?
Yeah.
He wasn't a Dudley, right? He was a highly respected Revolutionary War hero who bought Gideon's old farm,
Presumably looking for a quiet, isolated retirement.
which he definitely did not get. The story goes that on a perfectly clear, calm, completely stormless summer night, the general and his wife are sitting on their front porch.
Mm-hmm.
There is no rain, there is no wind,
Yeah.
and suddenly an isolated bolt of lightning drops directly out of the clear sky, strikes the porch, and kills his wife instantly.
Boom.
And General Swift, who is sitting mere feet away, is completely physically unharmed.
Now, from a modern meteorological perspective, this is an incredibly rare but documented phenomenon.
Like literal lightning from a clear sky.
Yes, it is literally a bolt from the blue. It is a positive lightning strike, which originates from the highly charged anvil top of a distant thunderstorm.
Okay.
These positive strikes can travel horizontally through the upper atmosphere for 10, sometimes 20 miles, before dropping to the ground in areas where the sky is completely clear.
That is terrifying. But I'm assuming you couldn't explain atmospheric horizontal charge transfer to an 18th century farmer whose neighbors were already dying of mysterious madness.
Absolutely not. You have to view this through the lens of a deeply traumatized, hypervigilant community.
Right.
They are already primed to see the valley as hostile. So when a freak statistical anomaly like that occurs, a laser-focused strike from a clear sky that kills one person and spares the man beside her, it completely breaks their grasp on reality.
It looks targeted.
It confirmed every paranoid hallucination that heavy metals had been inducing. It wasn't just bad soil anymore. It was targeted, divine, or demonic wrath.
And that event seems to serve as the final psychological nail in the coffin.
It really did.
General Swift's mind deteriorates, and he dies a few years later of quote-unquote grief. By 1795, Abiel Dudley's wife dies in childbirth.
Tragedy after tragedy.
In 1798, Abiel's 18-year-old son wanders out into the dense woods of the dark entry forest and simply never returns. Nobody is ever found.
Just vanishes.
And by 1820, the last surviving children of the original families have packed up and fled. The bleeding out of the town is complete.
And the abandonment was absolute. Over the next few decades, the relentless New England winters collapsed the wooden farmhouses, the cellar holes filled with decaying leaves, the forest canopy closed over the clearings, and the land returned to exactly what the Mohawk warned it should be, an uninhabited wilderness.
So Dudleytown died in 1820.
Completely dead.
It should have been nothing more than a footnote in a local historical society newsletter. So how do we leap from a forgotten, toxic ruin to a place where modern state police have to deploy surveillance cameras to catch hordes of trespassers?
It's a huge jump.
How did this dead zone become a national obsession?
Well, that transformation requires a catalyst, and it begins roughly a century later in 1918 with the arrival of a New York physician named Dr. William Clark.
Ah, Dr. Clark. He is a fascinating figure because he really represents the ultimate hubris of modern industrialized man stepping into an ancient environment.
He really does.
He's wealthy, he's educated, and he wants a rustic summer retreat. He buys up the old Dudleytown acreage, completely oblivious or dismissive of the local folklore.
Just ignores it.
He builds a cabin, brings his wife up to the woods, and assumes they will enjoy a peaceful communion with nature.
But the environment hasn't changed. The geography is still oppressive. The shadows are still deep.
The water is still toxic.
Exactly. And within 6 months, Dr. Clark's wife suffers a catastrophic mental breakdown. The medical records of the time call it nervous exhaustion.
Her descriptions of what she was experiencing are deeply unsettling, actually.
Yeah, they are.
She claimed she couldn't sleep because she was being actively stalked by creatures in the tree line. She told her husband they were not animals, not human, but something in between. She heard unnatural sounds. She felt constantly watched.
And we can analyze her breakdown through a few different psychological lenses today. She was likely experiencing severe pareidolia.
What's that exactly?
It's the brain's tendency to impose recognizable patterns, like faces or figures, onto ambiguous stimuli.
Like seeing shapes in clouds.
Exactly. Or, in her case, when you are isolated in a profoundly dark, unfamiliar forest, your brain naturally seeks out threats. It turns the shadow of a branch into a stalking figure.
No, that's creepy.
Combine that hypervigilance with the profound silence and isolation of the valley, and you have a recipe for acute anxiety and paranoid delusions.
Well, whatever was causing it, Dr. Clark doesn't try to fight the land. He gets his wife out, they flee back to New York, and he never attempts to live there again.
Smartest thing he did.
But he does make a monumental decision. He gathers several wealthy landowners and forms the Dark Entry Forest Association.
Right, the land trust.
Yeah. This is a private land trust with a singular explicit mandate.
Yeah.
Lock the valley away from the public forever. They plant thousands of trees, erect strict no trespassing signs, and attempt to seal Dudleytown in a vault.
And for most of the 20th century, their strategy worked.
It did.
Dudleytown reverted to a localized piece of folklore. It was something teenagers in neighboring towns used to scare each other, but it wasn't a destination. But folklore is incredibly susceptible to shifts in pop culture. And at the end of the 20th century, a massive cultural shift occurred.
1999, the cinematic catalyst. We have to talk about the Blair Witch Project.
We do. It is impossible to overstate how fundamentally that film altered the American public's relationship with the concept of a cursed forest.
It really was a watershed moment. Here is an independent, micro-budget horror film that goes on to gross almost $250 million.
Incredible numbers.
But it wasn't just a financial success, right? It changed the behavior of the audience. It popularized the found footage genre, presenting the aesthetic of real amateur people taking video cameras into the woods to hunt for legends.
Historically, folklore served as a behavioral boundary. A ghost story was a societal tool used to say, this area is dangerous, do not enter.
Like stay out of the woods or the witch will get you.
Exactly. The legend of the curse was supposed to keep people away, but the Blair Witch Project inverted that psychological mechanism.
Oh, wow, you're right.
It popularized legend tripping. Suddenly, the danger wasn't a deterrent, it was the attraction.
People wanted to go in.
They didn't want to avoid the cursed woods. They wanted to film themselves inside them, proving their bravery and hoping to capture an anomaly on tape.
And the moment that shift happened, Dudleytown, with its pitch-black forest, its history of madness and vanishing teenagers, and its eerie, leaf-filled cellar holes, was suddenly the ultimate real-world stage for everyone's amateur ghost hunting fantasy.
It was perfect for it.
The local legend was aggressively thrust onto national internet forums.
And the resulting influx of thrill seekers was unprecedented.
It became an absolute epidemic. People started driving from across the country to sneak into the dark entry forests.
From everywhere.
Our sources track the escalation in the police reports. The Connecticut State Police went from occasionally shooing away local kids to dealing with dozens of organized trespassing incursions every year.
It was a nightmare for them.
In 2011, an entire crew of amateur documentary filmmakers was arrested and heavily fined.
Yep.
In 2018, police busted a large group of ghost hunters operating in the middle of the night with specialized EVP recorders and EMF meters.
They brought gear.
The local historical society literally had to issue a blanket policy refusing to answer any questions about Dudleytown because their phone lines were being paralyzed by paranormal investigators.
So the land trust was forced to adapt. They had to militarize a forest.
Yeah, they really did.
They hired private security patrols, installed modern surveillance grids, and worked closely with local law enforcement to ensure every single trespasser was prosecuted.
Which brings us to the core, bewildering question of this deep dive. So what does this all mean?
That is the million-dollar question.
The owners have made it legally ruinous to go there. The police will arrest you, fine you, and give you a criminal record.
Yeah.
And as we have meticulously detailed, the environment itself is an active biological hazard loaded with heavy metals.
Literally toxic.
Why are sensible, modern human beings risking their money, their freedom, and their physical health to break into a dark patch of trees?
It speaks to a profound psychological hunger in modern society, I think.
How so?
Well, think about the daily life of the average modern citizen. It is highly regulated, digitally mapped, deeply predictable, and intensely safe.
Yeah, that's true.
We are largely insulated from the raw, unpredictable terror of the natural world. Thrill seekers trespass into places like Dudleytown because they have a deep-seated desire to touch the curse.
They want to feel something real.
They want an encounter with the ancient, the unexplainable, and the genuinely dangerous as a rebellion against the mundanity of their routines. Finding a ghost proves that the world is still vast, mysterious, and capable of magic.
But here's the thing. When they break in, they do report experiencing things.
Oh, all the time.
The police records and the historical society files are packed with trespassers claiming the exact same phenomena. They swear phantom hands grab them in the dark.
They always mention the cold spots, too.
Yes. They report hearing disembodied voices whispering from the tree canopy. They experience sudden, freezing drops in temperature and an overwhelming, suffocating sensation of being actively hunted.
It's very consistent.
Are they all just collectively lying to sound cool on the internet?
They aren't lying. They are genuinely experiencing terror, but they are processing it through a deeply filtered, compromised psychological lens.
Okay, unpack that.
This is the ultimate demonstration of psychological priming. If I hand you a flashlight, tell you a house is occupied by a violent 500-year-old demon, and push you inside alone at midnight, your brain's threat detection system goes into overdrive.
Your adrenaline is redlining before you even take a step.
Exactly. You are in a state of severe hyperarousal. And in that state, your brain's ability to rationally process sensory data degrades.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
It begins to misinterpret normal, benign environmental occurrences as existential threats. Well, when you are standing in a pitch-black forest, expecting to be murdered by a ghost, the sound of an owl shifting on a branch isn't a bird. Your brain categorizes it as a demonic whisper.
Right.
A completely normal atmospheric breeze becomes a supernatural cold spot. A spider web brushing against your cheek in the dark is instantly interpreted as a phantom hand.
Because that's what you're looking for.
The fear creates the ghost. The legend acts as a self-fulfilling psychological loop.
I am sitting here looking at all the evidence we've compiled, and I cannot get over the tragic, almost cosmic irony of this entire situation.
The irony is so thick.
You have thousands of modern people
Yeah.
armed with digital cameras and electromagnetic meters sneaking into these woods in the dead of night. They are desperately searching for the invisible, supernatural spirit of an English tax collector who died 5 centuries ago.
Yes.
And in their desperate search for a phantom, they are completely, blissfully ignoring the actual invisible killers that wiped out the town.
They are hunting for a myth while standing barefoot on the reality.
Yes, they are trespassing into a literal environmental hazard zone. They are standing on top of glacial soil loaded with arsenic, breathing the air of a valley that systematically starves its inhabitants of basic sunlight.
And probably stirring up contaminated dust while they do it.
Exactly. They're sneaking into a toxic waste dump because they think it's a haunted house.
It is the ultimate triumph of human narrative over scientific reality.
That's a great way to put it.
We would rather be haunted than poisoned. A ghost story is simply more compelling to the human brain than a geological survey.
It is a phenomenal testament to the power of a good story. Let's synthesize the journey we've taken today.
Let's do it.
We started by dismantling a 16th century myth, proving that the beheaded nobleman Edmund Dudley had absolutely zero genealogical connection to the modest farmers who settled in Connecticut.
Just zero connection at all.
Then we stripped away the supernatural veneer to reveal the grim, horrific reality of what actually happened to those 4 families. A tiny, isolated encampment of 15 desperate people trying to conquer glacial rocks, slowly losing their sanity and their lives to heavy metal toxicity and permanent shadow.
We observed their painful, decades-long collapse, culminating in the 1820 abandonment, where the environment simply erased their efforts and took the valley back.
And finally, we explored how the trauma of a wealthy doctor's wife in 1918, combined with a cultural explosion of the Blair Witch Project in 1999, transformed this deadly ecological dead zone into an irresistible magnet for modern trespassers.
Which created a bizarre cycle of thrill-seeking and arrests that continues right up to this very minute.
The ultimate takeaway from all our sources today is that Dudleytown truly is cursed.
It is. The Mohawks were absolutely right.
It just isn't cursed by demons or angry aristocrats. It is cursed by geography.
Exactly. It serves as a stark, unforgiving reminder that despite all our technology and arrogance, there are places on this earth that are fundamentally not meant for human habitation.
They just aren't.
Nature drew a hard boundary line in the dark entry forest, and when human beings arrogantly try to cross it, the environment will systematically break their minds, break their bodies, and reclaim the space.
If a landscape is so ecologically hostile that it slowly, relentlessly destroys the sanity and the physical health of every single person who attempts to build a life there, does it really matter if the mechanism of that destruction is supernatural or geological?
Not to the people living there.
The end result is identical. People die, families vanish, and woods take over. It leaves you with a final thought to ponder as you look at the map tonight. How many other famous haunted places around the world, the infamous asylums, the abandoned mining towns, the ruined frontier forts, are really just scenes of ancient, misunderstood, ecological poisoning?
It makes you wonder.
How many legendary ghosts are really just the shadows of a toxic earth? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the legends around you.